Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now.
Today we're joined by Gary Semics, a legend in motocross both as a competitor and as a coach. Gary's not only competed at the highest levels, but has also helped shape the careers of numerous top riders through his acclaimed training programs. You'd be hard-pressed to find a man who cares more than Gary about this industry and its future. So let's kick up some dirt with Gary right here on the One Gang podcast.
I call a generation in motocross about 10 years, because when you get into your prime, you probably got maybe 10 years, sometimes not that long. And I say each generation learns from the previous generation, improves, and passes on that information to the next generation.
What's up, One Gang? I used to think that if I spent big money on riding gear with a logo on the back, I was getting top quality. I gave Leather Up a shot. I wasn't sure at first, could I really get quality gear without spending a fortune? But after putting tens of thousands of miles on their jackets and vests, I had my answer. No busted zippers, no loose stitching, just solid, well-made gear that lasts. Leather Up carries trusted brands like Milwaukee Leather, Hot Leathers, and more, with gear for every rider and every budget. Plus, their customer service actually cares and picks up the phone, something rare these days. So do yourself a favor, check out leatherup.com. Whether you need jackets, vests, chaps, boots, helmets, or luggage, they've got you covered. And because you're part of the One Gang Worldwide family, use code CW20 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. Stop overpaying, gear up with Leather Up, and see the difference yourself. One Gang Worldwide podcast, brought to you by Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping. Since 1978, Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping has been the trusted name in transporting motorcycles safely across the country. With custom designed pallets and air ride trailers, your bike is secure and protected every step of the way. By choosing Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping, you're supporting a dedicated small business that prioritizes quality and customer satisfaction. Ship with a peace of mind, knowing your motorcycle is in expert hands. Visit keyboardmotorcycleshipping.com for more information. Now, let's dive into today's episode. What's up, One Gang? Welcome to the show. We got a great show for you guys here today. We got Gary Semics, owner of Gary Semics Motocross Schools and Streaming Video. What a history this man has, and I'm stoked to get into it. So welcome to the show, Gary.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here, Gary. We're excited to have you. We'll start the show like we normally do and get into the early years of Gary. Let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up, and what was little Gary like? Were you that kid always covered in dirt, riding bicycles?
Yeah, I was born and raised in McDonald, Ohio, which is a suburb just north of Youngstown.
Okay.
And yeah, it was in a kind of a neighborhood, but it wasn't real densely populated. So my dad had a small farm, like a 3-acre farm, had a bunch of horses and coon dogs and a little bit of cattle.
Nice.
And I grew up running around the neighborhood on a bicycle,
Nice.
going down to a friend's house and playing and doing all that fun stuff. You know, had a good area there to grow up in. Could walk to school. It was about a mile away though, but it was a good neighborhood to grow up in and play in and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
I lived there until I was 7 years old, and then my dad always wanted to be a farmer, but he really didn't know how to make enough money at it. So he was a full-time iron worker too.
Wow.
Cool.
And so he worked his butt off. And my mom, she wanted to make some money too. So she went to cosmetology school and became owned a salon and did women's hair and stuff like that. So I was kind of out on my own. They were so busy working, you know, I just went and did whatever I wanted pretty much.
Right.
And
Do you remember the first time you threw your leg over a bike? How old were you?
Yeah, I remember that day like it was
Nice.
yesterday.
Take us into
Because when we moved to, well, we moved to a bigger farm in Lisbon, Ohio. My dad bought 100 acres and wanted to really get into farming and still ironworking. And I kept begging him for a motorcycle because ever since I could remember seeing a motorcycle, I really, really wanted one. I was just, that was it for me. I wanted a motorcycle. So he finally bought me one when I was 10 years old, and we had the farm, and I could ride back through the farm and get in these strip mines. You don't know where
Oh,
strip
cool.
mines are, where they dig for coal and then they leave the ground. It's all hilly and crazy for riding, you know. I ride in there, and there was dirt roads back there. I could ride around, you know. I could go a long ways. And I even had friends back on the dirt road. I'd go to ride on a motorcycle to their house and play on that was a Harley 50. It was like a moped without pedals.
Cool.
Harley 50.
Reach speed.
That is funny.
Yeah. It was a street bike because my dad didn't know anything about dirt bikes. When he was younger, he told me stories about him riding a suicide shift Harley and Indian,
Nice.
and him and his buddies would do hill climbs. So he
Cool.
was in the hill climbing. So loved motorcycling. I mean, that's all I did was ride that bike every chance I got. But the other thing was I had to work on the farm. I was already working on the farm pretty hard, like when I was 9 years old, because my dad was old school.
Right.
You know, my grandparents, both sides of my family were from Yugoslavia, and they came over here, and they went through the Depression. My parents went through the Depression, so they were old school.
Wow. Yeah.
And I had to work on farm. I mean, it was work, and chores after school, the whole 9 yards. Long story short, got a bigger motorcycle. I kept riding. It was a Honda 160 Honda Scrambler. Started doing some hill climbs with it because me and my friend snuck out on the highway with another friend, got in a big high-speed crash.
Oh, shoot.
I mean, we came
Oh,
together.
man.
We didn't know that he was going to turn in front of us. He was sweeping wide and going to go into this wide turn, and we thought he was going to go straight. So we were wide open right beside him. They're passing.
Right.
He turned and we center punched him.
Oh gosh.
So all three of us in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. I didn't get hurt too bad. I was just road rash everywhere. Back then we didn't wear helmets.
I know.
Well, you still don't have to wear a helmet in Ohio.
Florida either.
So my dad was pissed. I mean, that motorcycle slid down the highway, the center case, it slid so far in the engine that it just wore the engine away into the transmission. And
Gosh.
he was pissed. So it was locked up. No, you weren't right. I couldn't ride it. About 3 months later, he came around and took it to a shop, and they restored it. And he wanted them to make a hill climber out of it. So that's all we knew, hill climbing. So I was hill climbing it. I mean, it was okay, but I wasn't really into it that much. But then in 1967, a friend of mine I went to school with, his dad, the guy that he worked for, took us to a motocross race in New Philadelphia, Ohio at Matthias Raceway. I didn't know it was a motorcycle race. Motocross. I thought it was a hill climb till I got there. And it just happened to be one of the first races that Ennis and Dye started bringing the Europeans over here to Ohio, to America.
No way.
It had all top Czech riders. Joel Robert was there. All these riders on Husqvarnas and the CZs. That's what I really like. Those two. But I didn't even know motocross yet. Never had any idea what it was. It wasn't in America until just now. It was just starting to come into America. So I was running around those hills with my jaw dropped wide open, just in awe. These bikes. I mean, I get emotional now just thinking about it. And I knew right then that that's what I wanted to do.
That's cool.
Well, I get back home. I'm on my Honda. 160 Honda Scrambler. And I'm making circles in the field. I'm learning how to corner better and trying to emulate what I saw them doing. And man, that was it. That's all I wanted to do was ride motocross. Got bigger bikes over the years, and working my butt off for my dad on the farm,
Right.
and riding every chance I got. And my next bike was a Sherpa S
Sherpas.
200 Voltaco.
Mhm.
And then I started going to some motocross races and hair scrambles, but my parents were too busy. They didn't know what motocross was. They just wasn't into
Right.
it. I had to work a long bike. I had to do everything. So out riding locally in the strip mines and stuff, I met some people, and one of the guys' name was Dale Burt. And he was about 15 to 20 years older than me. At this time, I was 15. Well, no, actually still 14 on Apple Taco. He started taking me to motocross races and hair scrambles. And I'm starting to bring these trophies home, and it's kind of getting my parents a little interested in what's going on. So
Nice.
they wanted to go see
Nice.
one. Once they saw one, they liked it, and they started taking me on the weekends. And next bike was Husqvarna.
Hey,
I think it was a 400.
hey Gary, can I
420.
interrupt you for 1 second? I wanted to ask you a question because
Sure.
you're taking us through, which is awesome. And with the trophies, I wanted to ask you this. When did you actually know that you were where you said to yourself, like, hey man, I'm pretty good at this? Was there a moment at that age, 14, 15 years old, where you kind of realized I can do this?
Yeah. Well, by 15, I knew it. I discovered it when I was 15 on that first Husqvarna, going to local races. But, I was riding expert class by then.
Wow.
So I was riding against the best riders in the areas. And when I started to win a couple motos against them, then that just motivated me even more. And that's kind of when I knew I was good at it. I didn't know, I wasn't thinking career, 15 years old.
Right.
This is all just starting, but I kept riding, and I'd ride all week as much as I could, at least 3 days a week. Work on my bike, get it ready for the weekend, go racing every weekend.
Right.
And then in wintertime in Ohio, snow and ice, we're racing hair scramble. I'd go with Delbert. If my parents didn't want to take me or couldn't take me in the winter, but we'd go racing, year round. And that was the last bike my dad ever had to buy me, was that first Husqvarna.
Gotcha.
Those 3 bikes. Local shops started sponsoring me when I was 15, 16. And then my real career started. I was pretty much winning everything locally. And then I was riding for a CZ shop. I switched to CZs. They were in Canton, Ohio. And they wanted to send me on the TransAm circuit in 71.
Right.
But you had to be 18 to get a pro license at the time, and you had to get an AMA and FIM license. So I was only 17. I was going to have to quit school and go on the TransAm circuit. And this CZ shop wanted to send me to California. Well, I couldn't get a license. We tried to get a license by altering my birth certificate, but the AMA caught it.
Did your mom and dad know?
Yeah, my dad was helping me do
Oh,
it.
no shit. Wow, that's funny. So that's cool. He was on board then.
Oh, yeah. But, well, Dale Burton, I said, Dale, I can't get my license. I got this opportunity. He said, I'll get a license. And you can go on my license. And at the time, the FIM AMA license was about a 3x4, and it was paper, thick cardboard, like you slip it in this plastic little jacket thing for it. So we took his picture off. It was just glued on. we took his picture off the license, and we cut my little picture out and stuck it.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Like fake IDs
Little
to get
X-Acto
drinking,
blade.
to buy beers. Now you do it to get in. That's so funny.
Yeah. So, okay, I got my license. He's, at this time, I'm 17, he's 31. And it said on the back of the license. So I'm going to I get on an airplane, first time ever on an airplane by myself. They freighted my bike to California. First TransAm was in Carlsbad.
What are you riding at this point in time? What bike are you on that they shipped?
The 360
360
CZ, or 360, 380 CZ,
Okay.
whatever they were. And Jimmy Whiter, who is also riding CZs, and the Czech riders are going to be there. You know, the big team of Czech riders. Jimmy was picking me up at the airport and then going to take me to the races, you know, drive to all the races.
Right.
12 races in that series. And he did. He picked me up. And man, I was a little shy farm boy. You know, I spent a lot of time at home riding alone, you know, riding and playing with my friends and stuff like that. But I didn't get out about, you know, to a city or anything. So Jimmy was real flamboyant, outgoing. I mean, this guy is sitting in the side of his van playing his guitar, singing a little song about the European riders, you know, making this shit up. It was really funny. So he was very outgoing in personality. After the race, he decided he didn't want to take me to the rest of the races.
Why?
But he was nice enough to line me up with a local dealer, CZ dealer that lived there in the area. And he was going to take me in.
Gotcha.
My bike broke the frame in the race. But it wasn't too bad. It was just the frame part that held the exhaust, low pipe exhaust on it. So I stayed with him. He fixed my bike for me. They were real nice. It's him and his wife. And I got to hang out in the shop and look through all these motorcycle magazines, motocross magazines, my heroes. And I was having a great time. He lined up a ride for me to go to the next race, which was in Boise, Idaho, with Bruce Barron. I don't know if you guys know him. He was a racer back then. So I rode up there with him. And now all this time, my parents gave me $250 spending money. And if I ran out of money, I had to go back home and finish school. That was it, period. So, man, I had to do good enough to earn purse money. And the first one in Carlsbad didn't go well. I don't think I made any money at all in that one.
Why didn't it go well? What was going on during the races that?
Well, I remember my pipe, pipe breaking. So I don't remember
So it was
if
mainly
I
mechanical
got finished.
stuff.
Yeah, that was the bad one. And in the first lap, there was a pile up, and I ran over a guy and almost went down. So I was way bad.
Gotcha.
And by the way, I think the guy that I ran over was Jimmy White.
Oh shit!
No, for sure. Unintentionally,
Yeah, of course.
Because at this time, I didn't even know that he wasn't going to take me the rest of the race.
Right.
But I do remember in Boise, Idaho, and I mean, you got a field of European riders there, and I'm riding the international class, the open class. And I got 15th and made a little bit of money, which was really a good result for American. And then Boise, and then I think the next one was Wisconsin. And anyway, kind of hitching rides, because Bruce Barron didn't work out either. I got another ride from Boise to Wisconsin with a guy named Jeff Wicks. And then my parents picked me up in Wisconsin and got to stay home for a week or two and then on with the rest of the series. But by this time, my dad said, just take my pickup truck and go to a few more races before they go way out west again. So the plan was to go to St. Louis, Missouri TransAm, and then Oklahoma TransAm. and then I'd come back home, because then from Oklahoma it went to Wisconsin, Washington, to Puyallup, Livermore, California, and then Saddleback, California. So that was the plan. And I drove out there by myself, had this fiberglass, no, it was a aluminum shell on the back of the pickup truck. Had my bike up in there.
Nice.
And get there, and met Sonny Feo, Ghost Cycles. And we became friends. And then I met Brad Lackey there, Tony Wynn there, some other guys. And we went from there to Little Rock, Arkansas, to the CZ shop where Tony Wynn lived. All of us guys together, even though we weren't all on CZs, and the CZ team even went there.
Wow.
So I'm making more friends and, really having a good time.
How old are you at this point?
17. Yeah, still 17. And did okay in St. Louis, made some more money. I don't remember what place I got, but made more money. And then in Oklahoma, made more money, was doing good. Then I was supposed to go back home to Ohio, right? Brad Lackey started talking me into, no, don't go. I'll find you a ride to go to Washington. And then you can stay at my house when you're in Livermore. And you can finish the rest of the series. So we're on the phone, call my parents up. Okay, go ahead, go. Left the truck at a gas station. The guy said he was going to watch it, be cool. So I finished the last 3 races and did well in pretty much all 3 of them. Actually, in the last race at Saddleback, they had my picture on the cover of Motocross Action magazine. And they thought it was Roger DeCoster. And they put my picture in place of Roger's. So that was like,
Yeah.
Can't believe
Right,
it.
for a young kid, man, making the cover of a magazine, that's got to be insane.
Yeah. And my hero was Roger DeCoster. He was one of my heroes. Roger and Torsten Holman, Joel Escobors, a lot of guys. So on my ride back to Oklahoma to pick up my truck, I was with Sonny Feo and his mechanic in his van. We had 4 CZs packed in his van, and we drove from Southern California to Oklahoma, got in my truck, went to Ohio. And that was my first adventure racing in a series.
That's wild. So
It was awesome.
In
Yeah, it was awesome.
1974 was kind of a crazy year for you. You took home the 500cc Supercross champ. What was that season like? Was it hot out of the gate, or was it kind of a slow burn? What was that year like for you?
In 74, that was a good year, and was number 8 on Husqvarna. And man, the works bikes were awesome at that time. And Husky, especially Husky, but a lot of the factories were like, no more mini bike racing, because this mini bike craze took off with the mechanics and the riders. And the star for Husqvarna, Torleif Hansen, at the time, tore his knee up on a mini bike crash.
Ooh.
So you cannot ride mini bikes. If you get hurt on a mini bike, you're done. We're going to fire you. Well, it didn't stop us when we were at my parents' farm in Ohio, because a lot of the riders and mechanics would stay there at the farm. And you bunch of young kids, you're going to ride your freaking mini bikes. So my teammate Bob Grassi and I got hurt in the same day. It wasn't the same accident, but it was in the same day. He tore his ACL, and at the time there was no surgery to repair it. So his career was over because he couldn't ride anymore.
Yeah.
And I broke my elbow and had to be in a cast. And instead of going to Honda Hills TransAm, we were sitting at home on the farm. So that was depression.
Right, of course.
Big time.
For young guys not being able to race, that's got to be heartbreaking.
Torture. And at the time, communication wasn't like it is today. We didn't know that they actually fired us. No, they didn't tell us. So at the time I had a motorhome, and after a few weeks, I drove to St. Louis, Missouri to meet up with the series, still in my cast. But I figured after that, I'll drive to Livermore, California, and I'll be able to race by then. Well, it wasn't until I got to the motel, the headquarters motel in Livermore, that I found out that Husqvarna fired me. And they gave my bike to Ken Howerton. So I didn't even have a bike.
Wow.
I drove all the way up. I didn't have a bike. I was good friends with Billy Grossi. He was riding for Team Honda. He talked to his mechanic and asked him if he could fix the bike up, his practice bike up, and I could race it. So his mechanic asked the team manager. He said, "Okay, you can do it, but it's just for these last 2 races. Doesn't mean we're hiring you or anything." So long story short, I rode it in the last 2 races at Livermore and Saddleback, and I got 4th at Livermore and 3rd at Saddleback.
Sweet.
Now at this time I'm riding the support class, but it was enough to get my ride with Kawasaki in '75. That was a close call, because if I didn't get that ride, I don't know what I would have done.
So that was a huge moment in your life. I mean, shoot, you don't ride those 2 last races, you may not even be doing this no more, no?
Exactly.
Wow, that's
Exactly.
crazy. Talk about fate.
And well, that's the thing, people. If you want something bad enough,
That's right.
there is no plan B.
Mhm.
You just have to be all in. You really have to go for it. Be dedicated to doing it.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the U.S. for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a butt buffer for every rider's style. Get your butt buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered.
Gary, I wanted to ask you a question, because you had rode with Husqvarna, Kawasaki, Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki. You pretty much checked every box as far as the racing teams were concerned. What was it like bouncing between teams, and in a day, how different of a support from brand to brand? And kind of like the last part of the question would be like, where did you truly feel best at out of those?
Yeah. Going from Husky to Kawasaki was a good move for me. And it was, I didn't really think about it too much. It was just that I had a bike to race. And previously I wasn't getting much money. I think in '74, my salary was 24 grand. And I don't even remember any bonus money or anything
Wow.
like that, or there wasn't any other like aftermarket companies that are paying anything. So I wasn't like I didn't have a lot of money. That's why that Kawasaki ride was so important. And they upped it to I forget how much it was. It was under 30 grand, but it wasn't too crazy. But in that time,
Right. In
that
that
was pretty good
time,
money.
close to 30 grand, it was making pretty good money considering you were still a super young guy too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it was like a dream. I was living my dream. I just wanted to race motocross,
Right.
and I was getting to do it at the highest level. So it was awesome. Kawasaki was on there for 2 years. Wait, 75, 6, and 7. That's 3 years. Um, and I got injured really bad in the beginning of '77. '76 was awesome year. I mean, I almost won the national championship.
Nice.
Got second.
Nice.
I won more races, but the way the points worked out, I got second. I had the Supercross championship, TransAm nationals. I was competitive. I mean, I was winning motors and TransAms there in the international class. And we were coming along in 76, and I thought 77 would be even better. But I got hurt really bad right before the 77 Supercross series was going to start, and ended up having a calcium deposit growing in my quadriceps in my left leg, to the point where I really shouldn't have been racing, because I couldn't take my foot off the foot peg and hold it in front of me, in front of the foot peg, but still ended up doing fairly well. But Kawasaki, I guess, was getting pressured from Kawasaki Japan, to make changes. And the team manager told me years later that, man, I should have never done that. I should have kept you on. But they fired me.
Yeah.
And
Gosh.
I couldn't believe it, because I rode their piece of crap in 75 because I broke 13 transmissions in that bike, practicing and racing. So
Holy
I
cow.
went from number 5, national number 5, to number 15 in 76. And then in 76, I did so well for them on their newer bikes. And after 77, the injury and not doing as well, still top 10 everywhere. They let me go. So that really hurt. And the only thing I could get going at that time was on a CAN-AM, and the bike needed a lot of work. I mean, it wasn't very good. The clutch, when you put it in gear to wait for the gate to drop, you couldn't hold it very long. It would start dragging. There was stuff like that. It was ridiculous.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
But towards the end of the year, my mechanic, who was really good, Mike Stark, he talked factory in to letting him make changes to the bike. So he got help from aftermarket companies and made a whole new bike out of it. Plus, he got help from the factory. And by the TransAm series, especially Unadilla, the bike started to really, really work well. And I started getting some top 10 finishes, top 5 finishes, actually, in the international class on it. So I ended up really good on it. And Honda picked me up in 79. I always wanted to be on Honda for some reason. They were like, so I got that factory ride. And I mean, interrupt me anytime if I'm talking.
No. This is great,
No,
man,
you're
because you're
good.
taking us through. So it's interesting to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a
So
good
you
question
got
for you,
into
Gary.
Honda.
Yeah, I got on Honda in 79.
How long were you with them?
And just that 1 year, mostly because the team manager and assistant team manager that hired me right at the beginning of 79, they got fired and they got a new team manager. The assistant team manager, Gunnar Lister, was cool, but the new team manager, he was more of an office guy. He didn't know what was going on. So him and I clashed a lot, which was stupid for me. But, I was just telling him, like, dude, this ain't working. I got to get the lean suspension on this bike. Me and my mechanic at the time knew what we had to do to the bike, but it wasn't getting done because he wasn't cooperating. So anyway, we clashed. I ended up getting 3rd overall in 500 nationals that year. I was only 10th in the Supercross series, which wasn't good, but overall, it was a pretty strong year. And he ended up fired.
Jeez.
Like, just, dude, give me another chance, But anyway, I was privateer in 80. And I went to Lorenz Offner province, LOP, if you remember that team, the satellite team. Yeah. Well, it stood for loss of parts. No,
Lots of
LOP.
That was the inside joke. LOP.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Because we had was it production bikes at this time, the works bikes, there was production rules weren't really that strong yet.
Right.
So the works bikes were like head and shoulders above production. But I rode for them and had a lot of bike problems. My mechanic that he hired for me wasn't that good, and had a lot of bike problems. And just didn't work good. So results, I don't even remember, but they weren't terrible. I mean, they were top 10, but not that great. That's the year that Marty Moats won the Carlsbad Grand Prix in both motos, international class. His bike, he was on my team, but Lorenz, the owner of the team, was his mechanic, and he had next to a works bike. I mean, his bike was awesome, but not taking any away from Marty, because on that day he was magical,
Right.
and he won both motos against the best in the world. So he was awesome. I remember getting 8th in the second moto, but didn't have a great year that year. So going into 81, I was a full-on privateer. Yeah, I didn't want to quit racing. I was about 27, I think, at the time. I felt like I could still win if I got on good equipment. So I bought my own bikes, Yamahas. I think I bought 2 of them. I don't remember, maybe just one. And I got local engine builders and suspension people in the area. So I was living in Southern California to help me modify my bike. Long story short, I go to the first national and I get 3rd overall in the 250 class. And that's like awesome for a privateer. And then all of a sudden,
And privateer,
Suzuki,
sorry to interrupt, privateer means basically you fund yourself, right?
yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the time, I was trying to get a ride with Suzuki and Yamaha. Well, they didn't want to talk to me too seriously about anything. It was like they didn't have time. And when I got that 3rd, they're both calling me. They
Wow.
want me on
Wow.
on their team, but not the factory team. They want me on, it's kind of a support sponsorship where I have to race their production bikes. So I'm actually going to test their production bikes. And that's all I could get. So, okay, I ended up going with Suzuki because I liked the suspension so much better than the Yamaha. But the Yamaha engine was a lot faster. But I thought, well, we can modify the Suzuki. We can make the engine fast. They won't know about it. And never could make that Suzuki fast.
No.
I had engine builders. Yeah, they couldn't get any
what was
more
the major issue?
Just the way the cylinder and exhaust port and everything was designed.
Right.
It just, there wasn't much you could
That's
do to
crazy.
it. At least we couldn't find anybody to do it. So I was going to be 4th overall in the 250 class that year on that slow starting, come from the back motorcycle. And broke my collarbone the next to the last race. I missed the gear and ended on a jump, and didn't end up 4th. The points were so close, I couldn't race the last race, and ended up 9th in the series.
Dang.
So it wasn't really enough to get a factory ride. Suzuki really liked what I was doing, and they wanted to keep me as their test rider for pre-production bikes. By this time, I had a pre-production bike. And I knew that if I did that, I wasn't going to be able to win races. So in the meantime, I developed a good friendship with Graham Noyes, who was racing the Grand Prix in Europe. He was staying at my house a lot of times when we were in Southern California during TransAm circuit, and we were just really good buddies. He said, come over to Europe and race in 82. And he was hyping me up on how great it is over there. And he'd line up a ride for me for production bikes through Honda, Germany, the importer. So I said, okay. And that's what I was going to do in 82 for 82.
Right.
So I'm starting to do my training in January to get ready to go, took a little break from everything, and now I was going to start hitting it hard. Graham was still in America, staying at my house, so we were training together. And anyway, I came down with a cold, and I thought, I'm just going to train this cold right out of me, Well, that was a big mistake because I ended up getting super sick with, found out later it was a viral and bacterial infection.
Oh, geez.
That got down into my chest. And, see, just talking about it comes.
It
Right,
makes you
right,
cough.
right, right. So even worse to like a pneumonia?
It was like having the flu and a cold at the
Oh,
same
wow.
time.
Gross.
And I had a lot of congestion in my chest. Well, long story short, it just wouldn't go away. I couldn't train at all. And I rode a little bit. And I got a sponsor in Europe as a clothing company called Motocross Marketing. And they were going to send me to this big race in France. It's called La Touquet. It was a beach race, took off on the beach.
Cool.
Went through the sand dunes and stuff around through town, back on the beach. And it was like a 3-hour race.
Right.
You just did these long laps. And, man, I'm still sick, but I'm going. So I fly there. They have a team for me. I'm riding Kawasaki's, and we do this race. And it was an awesome race, man. I was ready to win that thing. I was pumped. But they had this, you started on the sand, and the tide was way out. So the beach was super wide. A lot of hard packed sand. And there were potholes in it. And there's 1,200 riders in it. And they all starting off at the same time. But I was up on the front row, and with everybody else, it was lined up beside me. And these bikes are geared to go over 100 miles an hour. So we're going down this beach for about a mile, I think, mile and a half before it heads into the sand dunes at 100 plus, watching these potholes that we don't endo. And about halfway down there, the bike seizes, comes to a stop, and piston seized against cylinder. So I thought, I'm scared, this is over. But I thought, oh, maybe it'll start. I'm kicking it. And it wasn't a real hard seize, it was just a mild seize. So after kicking it a bunch, it actually started again, and I took off and did last. Well, now,
Hey, Gary, is this going on still in the States, or is this when you were over in Europe?
this was in Europe.
In Europe. This is
This
when you
is
were doing the
Lucky
500 CCGP, right?
Yeah, in 82.
Okay. I was just
Yeah,
making
this
sure.
was-
Yep.
This was just to kind of getting me there.
Correct.
Didn't have to pay my
Right,
own
right, right.
expenses, and I got the start money for this race. And I rode we had a couple of laps to go towards the end, and I was moving up a lot. I don't know what position I was in, but I was moving up an awful lot. And towards the end of the race, it seized again on the
Man.
sand,
Gosh, man.
and I didn't finish.
Oh, that sucks.
But I mean, it didn't really matter too much. I could have made some good money if I would have finished good prize money, but I did get start money.
Good.
In that race, just to give you a little history on it, there was a lady got killed because going down the beach, the crowd was on both sides, and the riders were going down through the middle of the crowd at 100 miles an hour. And Garrett Ron, if you remember him, he raced for KTM at the time. He hit a lady because she thought she could make it across, and she was running with her little kid
Oh,
on the
gosh.
tan, and Garrett couldn't miss her, hit her. And that almost ended his career because he was banged up,
Wow.
broken up for a long time. That's how dangerous this freaking race was. But anyway, I came out of it alive, and I'm on a train. I'm going to Germany, to Honda, Germany, after this race to get my bikes and a truck and all this stuff to go. Graham lined me up with his mechanic's brother, who was going to be my mechanic. And we were going to be centrally located in Genk, Belgium, which is pretty central to all the GPs. So this is in March, we're getting there really early so we can do a lot of international races and make some start money and get going. So Graham's helped me out. Well, when I get to Honda, Germany, they're having some kind of holiday. I call them from the train station, and I really can't get a hold of the president or anybody that really works there, but some secretary answers the phone. She doesn't know anything about it. So I get a taxi and I get a ride to Honda, Germany, and I go there, and it's a holiday, a special holiday for Germany. And everybody in the airport is like drinking beer and they're drunk. I can't believe it. The airport, but the train station. And I get to the distributor, and it's pretty much the same thing. There's not many people there. It's hard to find anybody. And I'm looking around, can't find anybody. And I find one of the secretaries, and she still doesn't know anything about me. She doesn't know what to do with me. But one of the Honda of Germany riders that rides for Honda of Germany racer, Manford Schroer, sees me, and we start talking. He speaks good English. And he doesn't know anything about it, but he says, well, why don't you just come with me and stay at my apartment, and then we can figure things out. Cool. Yeah, he was really super nice. So we did that. And a day or two later, because I don't remember what day it was or anything, but maybe it was the next day, we go back, and the guy that's the president there is on vacation. So Manford says, well, until he gets back, you can stay with me and you can ride my practice bike and we'll go ride together. But it's wintertime out there, so we got to drive a long way to find some sand to be able to even ride. And at the same time, I'm freaking sick, man.
Yes. So you're still battling. How long has this been in you now?
Well, this started by the middle of January, and now it's March.
Holy shit.
And it gets, it gets better, and it gets worse.
And you never went to see a doctor, even when you were there?
Oh yeah, I did. I went to doctors in California. They just said, you have a bad infection. You have to rest until it goes away.
Did they put you on like antibiotics and stuff?
I think they did. I don't remember exactly, but I think they put me on it. Yeah, I'm sure they put me on it. And I was laying low. I wasn't training, I was trying to get rid of it. But then going there and racing in the cold was, not good for it. And so Manford, I figure I have to ride. I don't feel too bad. So I was riding with him. We go out and ride. Finally, the president gets back, and we go in and have a meeting with him. Well, I do. He doesn't know anything about it. So I don't understand how he could not know anything about it when Graham lined it up. But he didn't line it up with the president. He lined it up with a guy named Fred. I don't remember his last name. That was like in charge of parts departments and all kind of stuff in there. This guy must be hiding somewhere, because finally the president talks to him, and I don't know what he said, but the president was like, well, we're not sure what we can do for you, but one of our riders is injured right now, and you can have his van and his mechanic, and you can go to these races that are coming up here. So in other words, they're going to see who I am, if I can even ride. Because I wasn't a top American in the last couple of years, because I was riding production bike. Mm-hmm. But I did really well in the races. And long story short, they wanted to help me. So they gave me, the president told Fred to give me one bike, I don't know, so many parts and this and that. And the United States had left the van there, and they called America, and whoever they talked to said, yeah, he can use the van. So there I had a van. I was supposed to have one bike and some parts. But I remember being in the parts department and helping Fred load up the truck, and he must have felt bad for me because somehow he gave me 2 bikes. He gave me a whole spare engines, sets of
Nice,
wheels,
nice.
pipes. I mean, you name
Just
it,
in
he
case
just
something
threw it in.
happened, you had something.
Yeah. So I'm off to Genk, Belgium, to meet Graham, and Graham was true to his word there. I had a mechanic, his mechanic's brother was all gung ho to be my mechanic. I stayed at his house and we started working on it. He built up his little garage for a workshop, and we'd go over to Graham's factory mechanic, and he gave me factory forks that they had left over. He lined me up with some pipes that were really good, handmade pipes there in America. Set me up with Olin's to start testing with them, get an Olin's shop. I had a really good production.
Gary,
bike.
can I ask you a question? How many races?
Yeah.
How many races overall did you do when you were in Europe?
Well, that year we got there in March, and I started racing pretty much every weekend, what they call international races, pre-GP races in the area. I probably raced, seems like 8 or 10 of those,
Okay.
and was testing during the week with Olin's
Nice.
and stuff like that. And then the GPs were 12 races.
So you had a pretty good. Let me ask you this: how were you accepted as an American rider racing overseas? I mean, most of the guys kind of took you in, or was it a little bit of a battle there, here and there, where you were trying to kind of fit in, but they weren't taking you in? I mean, take us a little bit into that.
Well, if it wasn't for Graham's mechanic, Francois Goffings, and his brother, Jeff Goffings, I wouldn't have been able to do much of anything. I wouldn't have had a chance. Those guys took me under their wing and really, really helped me to do what I needed to do. And as far as the other riders, I mean, I think it's just like anything, when you're racing against these guys, they have some respect for you if you're good, and they treat you okay. But I didn't have any issues with them. They were all friendly to me. And I think a lot of that was because I was with Jeff and Francois and Graham. Graham was there too. So we all got along pretty well. Didn't have any issues like in that way.
So what was it like racing? I mean, you were in an era with legends, Bob Hanna, Roger DeCoster, Marty Smith. What was it like stacking up against those guys week after week?
You just get used to it. You started young and they started young, and you're racing against them, and it's the same guys pretty much. And you just don't think nothing of it really. It's just competition. You're just, I mean, it was cool with Roger, especially because he was one of my heroes, and then to be able to race against him, and he beat me most of the time, in the TransAm races, but I did win some motos in the TransAm, and it was just very, very rewarding, I guess you could say.
Do you still keep in touch with any of those guys?
When I see him, I do, talk to them, and if I go to national or supercrosses and see him, I talk to him a little bit, but not on a regular basis or the phone. No.
Right on.
I lived in California for 14 years, so I was around that whole scene. But in '89, I moved back to Ohio and got my own track, bought some land, built my own track, and was running my schools and everything off of the track. So I kind of lost touch with going to the races, seeing all those people, which even before that was losing touch with the camaraderie of the 70s of us racers when we started racing and just getting to know each other, meeting each other. And it was like a big traveling gypsy caravan, going to all these races. We're not even flying to the races yet. That didn't happen for me until 75. So 71 through 74, we're driving and having that camaraderie. That's what I miss. Those riders that I became such good friends with. I mean, we were competitive on the racetrack, but off the racetrack, we were best friends. Trained together, traveled together, did everything pretty much together.
I'm
And
sure
that's what
there's
I
some
miss
fun
the most.
stories that you probably
Oh,
some you can and some you can't share. So
yeah. Yeah, I think at my age, I could probably share them. Who cares?
that's awesome.
No, no, we had some great times. That's all I can say. Fantastic
Let
times,
me
yeah.
ask you this: wrapping up your pro career, you kind of, I mean, you had a pretty awesome run as a pro. Did here in the States, went overseas. Every racer eventually kind of faces that moment. When did you know it was time to hang up the boots and kind of shift your gears into the coaching part of your career?
Yeah, that was the hardest thing that I ever did in my life. Just went, well, it's 82 in Europe. That first year I was telling you about went really, really well. I mean, I ended up 7th overall in the international class.
Right.
As I got a factory bike a little ways into the series from Roger DeCoster. He pulled some strings and got me a factory bike. And to end that year like that, and then have a tentative contract with Kawasaki to go back in 83 and race for them was like, man, I came over here sick. I didn't get well until that year in the middle of June. I finally told myself, wow, I'm finally over that sickness, whatever I had.
In June.
And I
Gosh.
couldn't even train. I was racing sick most of the time. I got some help from a guy over there through Manford, Schroer, who trained cycle racers, and he gave me some special medicines to help me get over this. Without him, I might not have gotten over it, because he said he saw this with his cycle racers where it's a deep-seated viral and bacterial infection, and it can take 6 months
Wow.
to go away. And that's how long it took for that to get clear out of my system. So, and to still get 7th overall and to be leaving with a tentative contract for 83 was like, man, this was awesome.
Right.
I had so many hard times struggling through that series, and to come out like that was awesome. Well, it wasn't awesome because it ended up not being awesome because Kawasaki pulled their budget. Kawasaki of Japan pulled their budget for the GPs, and now the whole funding was coming out of Honda of England. So my ride disappeared. No more ride. Yeah. Anyway, my career ended in 74, really. And it was to a point where I was racing privateer again. I was 30. I still felt like I could win races, but I couldn't get production bikes to work good enough against factory bikes. As simple as that. So that's when I knew it was over. So I didn't try anymore after that. Came home to California, threw in the towel.
Gary, at this point, I wanted to interject really quickly, because at this point you could have walked away from the sport, but instead you doubled down and started training the next generation. What sparked that in this time frame?
Yeah, well, I tried some other jobs when I quit racing, like being a sales rep. I got a job as stunt riding, did some stunt riding for Hollywood. The one movie that I was in, you probably heard of, is Winner Take All.
You were in that movie? No kidding.
Yeah, I was one of the stunt riders in that movie. Did some stunts with Bad Billy, the lead character.
I'm gonna watch that again. Knowing that you are in it, it's even better. So.
Yeah, but after a couple of years of doing that kind of work, I didn't really feel a passion for it, and my passion was still in riding dirt bikes, racing motocross bikes. So I started racing locally in Southern California. And, it was tough making enough money racing locally, making minuscule purse money. So I figured out, well, I might as well do some motocross schools because that's what I know and I'm passionate about. So that's how my motocross school business started in 1985, towards the end of 85. I really started doing it.
Was there a lot of
Did you feel like did you feel like you'd be a good coach right out of the gate, or was it something you kind of had to exercise that muscle on?
Yeah, I didn't know. All I knew was I knew motocross. I knew what it took to get better on the bike. I knew how you had to train to be competitive. And that's all I knew. So I went into the whole thing with that mindset.
Right.
And as I started teaching, I started being more interested in technique. So I'd study the top riders and notice how they were doing things. And I could still ride really good. So I would try what I saw them doing on my bike, practicing and racing. And oh yeah, that does work better. So I started to develop all these techniques and even made a motocross practice manual of all the 55 absolute techniques of motocross, and started making videos, VHS tapes at the time. Now I have a streaming platform that has over 140 technique videos on it.
It's crazy.
And all about training and stuff like that too.
Gary, let me ask you this.
And
Let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
Because your training program has helped basically mold a ton of fast guys. Who are some of the standout riders you've worked with over the years? And tell our audience a little bit, what separates the good from the great?
Yeah, I mean, the first real popular racer that I trained was Jeremy McGrath. I started training him when he was 16.
Wow.
Yeah, 16 years old. And I noticed he had talent. And I kind of stuck with him and stayed in contact with him because I lived in Southern California, wasn't that far from me. Then, I mean, he was the guy really that I started with. And then
that's a good
once
person to
people
start
knew
with.
that, yeah, the top guy. Of course, by this time I trained hundreds, but I trained a lot of riders. And then I found him, and I had the eye, that knew this guy is good. He had the right mental outlook on everything, and he wanted to win. And his parents was really cool. And yeah, I got lucky, really, finding him, recognizing it, and then sticking with it. And then once people knew I was training him, they wanted to train too. And that really exploded my VHS sales at the time, and then DVD sales, and now streaming. And other riders came on board. I got us, John Dowd, Kevin Wyndham, Ernesto Fonseca, Stefan Roncardo, Mike Brown. I mean, it's just on and on. Training a lot.
What makes these guys special? Like, I don't race motocross, so I'm not familiar. You coach it and see it every single day. What makes these guys?
Well, I was really interested in that. When my career was over and I started racing, racing locally, I still wanted to get better. I was never good enough. I wanted to get better. So I started studying what does make these top guys better. A lot that it comes right down to, well, first of all, talent. Because if you don't have talent, no matter how hard you work, you're not going to get to the top. You're not going to be top. So they all have that talent, but then it's a lot more than talent. They want to win. And when they don't win or do really well, they're hard on themselves. They don't like that, and that makes them more and more determined to work harder, to figure things out, to be better, and to be able to win. So there's always that drive in them that comes first. They don't get sidetracked too much about other interests, taking their energy and focus away, but they're honed in on, this is what I want to do. What do I have to do to win? And to be able to work with those guys, like Jeremy, for example, it was just awesome, that he had all that and more. And he had a way of doing it that wasn't stressful on him. He had a way of doing it that was still fun. And I think that's so important because a lot of riders, they want it so bad, but then that kind of makes them stressed out because they're trying too hard. They're putting too much pressure on themselves. They're not having fun. And so there's a balance of having fun, doing what you got to do.
Gotcha. Thanks for answering that.
So
Sure.
you've broken down motocross into an array of micro techniques and drills. How did you develop that teaching method, and what's the secret sauce to it?
For me, it was frustration when I started doing more tools, explaining things to the riders, but they're not able to do them. Some of the guys don't really care. They're just there to have fun, or maybe their parents made them go to the school. But even the riders that really wanted to improve, they were struggling. They just couldn't do it. And so that made me discover that I need to break these techniques down into micro techniques. Like when you go into a corner, there's standing to sitting, there's braking, there's going from braking to accelerating. I call that the transition part of the corner. And there's so many techniques to go into going in and through a corner. So at first I'm trying to explain all these techniques. Obviously, they just couldn't do it. So I learned to micro technique. Okay, when you're approaching the corner, you're standing up and brake. So we do a drill where all you're doing is standing up and braking. You pick up a little speed, you stand up and brake. Stand up and brake. Okay, you got that. And then when you go into a corner, you're standing and braking. Now you have to go from standing to sitting and still brake. That's the second micro technique. And on and on and on with all the steps through the corner in micro techniques. Mm-hmm. And then they could do it.
Yeah.
They could do each micro technique, and eventually they could they could put them all together.
Mm-hmm. So do you stay consistent between riders, or have you found that different riders have different learning techniques, so you kind of customize or tailor your program a little bit depending on the rider?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it took me a while to learn, but I learned that each rider, especially when I'm training a top rider individually, even in group lessons with each rider, they learn it in a different way. Not everything works for
everybody,
for one ride. I mean, as far as learning the techniques, it's pretty much straightforward. The technique, you just have to do it this way. Micro technique, that's one thing. But the mental side, people underestimate the mental side of racing. You're lining up on the starting line, even if it's a local race, even if you're a beginner. I mean, that gate and all those riders trying to get through that first quarter at the same time it can be exciting for some riders. It can be stressful for some riders. And again, it's that mental outlook and balance in having fun, not being too worried about anything, just having confidence. You talk about you hear the top riders all the time talking about confidence. You have to find that confidence. You can't fool yourself. If you don't have it, you don't have it.
Gary, can I ask you a question? I've never raced motocross, but I love watching it. I mean, I've been riding my whole life. I've had dirt bikes, but I never raced it against others. Is that first corner when everybody's coming in out of the gate, is that the corner where you win it or lose it?
Well, it sure has a lot to do with it. And getting good track position on the first lap is key,
right?
And yeah, it's the most important part of the race for sure. And it's the only chance you have to pass all the riders at the same time.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Thanks. I've always been curious about that. So.
Yeah. So you also have a successful video training program at the Simeks motocrossvideos.com. Can you tell our viewers more about it and what they can expect with a subscription?
Yeah, sure. Over the years, well, I started my first video in 91, VHS tapes, and they make a series album. There was 8 in that series, and now I made more and more and more, and I'm still making them today, recently, now all the way up to 140 videos. And I just tried to put everything that I was learning while I was teaching into videos. So people that couldn't come to my schools, could get the videos and learn
Yeah,
off
great
videos.
idea.
That's how this whole thing started. And that's been very rewarding hearing from customers, how much it helped them and how they used it. And they learned everything from my videos. It's just really awesome to hear that. I've had some riders that actually did that and then came to my school in Ohio and told me how how much they learned everything from my videos. And I'm not just biased just saying this, but those riders were pretty darn good
That's cool.
in my school.
That's
They were
cool.
some of the
That's
better
very cool.
riders in the school. So I was doing something right. And it was my passion. Motocross was my passion. Racing was my passion. And then when I couldn't really, by the way, I did race up through 2012 till I was 58. That's when I raced Loretta Lynn's for the first time, and I did win all 3 miles.
Nice.
That
Nice,
Manford
buddy.
class.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks.
you know what?
But
This has been a thing that I've always been curious about. Especially, I love it when we talk to guys from the old school who kind of were coming up in this when this all started in the States, and now they're still part of this passion of theirs and giving it back to the younger generation. So this is where my question's going. Kind of like the evolution of motocross then and now. It's changed since your racing days, obviously, bikes, tracks, training, even the attitude of some of the riders. What do you think from your experience has changed the most? And do you think today's racers have it easier or harder than when you were coming up?
well, those are some good questions. Yeah, it's. I feel that it's a heck of a lot easier for riders nowadays because the bikes are so much better, and you don't really have to worry too much about your bike breaking down. Um, I mean, the parents, I think now it's more of a, especially recently in the last 5 or 6 years, it's become a lot more of a money sport. The 4 strokes, I think, have really hurt the industry in a way that it's too expensive for a lot of people to race now.
Mhm.
And it's complicated too, because if you don't know how to work on a 4 stroke and you have to take it to the dealership every time,
Yeah,
that's
it's
crazy.
expensive. Yeah.
And it's now you pretty much have to have at least at a minimum 2 bikes to be competitive if you're and race a lot. But if you're just doing it for fun, or get a 2 stroke, man, and go out and have fun and ride. Don't worry about what place you're going to get. Don't try to be super competitive. Just go out and have fun
Gotcha.
riding
Yeah,
your dirt bike.
yeah, those are
But to get to
approachable.
the top nowadays, it's very difficult. A lot of, I don't know, a lot of good riders out there coming up. But I always say what really changed motocross and changes motocross is it has to evolve. I call a generation in motocross about 10 years because when you get into your prime, you probably got maybe 10 years, sometimes not that long. And I say each generation learns from the previous generation, improves, and passes on that information to the next generation. So you got parents now that were top riders. I mean, that's been going on for a long time. And now they're raising their kid to be a top
Right.
rider. And just so much more information in the sport to get better. That's changed a heck of a lot. When I started back in the early 70s, I was one of the pioneers of motocross in America. And I think that was the best. I don't know. I was young, but I still think that was the best time because everything was new,
That's right.
being discovered. We just was adventurous and getting into this new world of motocross and helping it to take off, and it took off, man. It took off in the 70s, big
Right.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gary, you've done it all. You've won championships, trained legends. Is there anything left on the motocross bucket list for you?
Well, to be honest, I don't think so. I mean, I'm pretty
It's
much
incredible to
retired
be
now,
able to say that. Yeah.
and 70 years old. One thing that I learned through racing early on was training and how to train. And I forced myself to do it when I was in my teens, and then in my early 20s, I began to like it. I mean, it made me feel a lot better. I really got into it, and I've been training ever since. So I think what I can take away from motocross is I can still do that. I stay fit in the summertime. I do a lot of bicycling and swimming. In the winter, I go to the gym a lot, and I get that euphoric feeling from a good workout. So
Yeah. It's
that's
working. You
what I'm
don't look
doing now. And
70.
if I can help people, even inspire them to do that, I think I can still be of some use.
You
That's
you
awesome.
are for sure. And so for our listeners to be able to kind of connect with you, um, subscribe to the videos, buy the videos, where can they find you? How can they reach you on social media?
Um, Probably the best way is through my name, Gary Semics, on social media, and on my website is one of the addresses is GarySemics.com. Yeah, you get there, you can find my streaming platform and through there, and then you can contact me through email, through the streaming platform, or I even have a community on there. It's kind of like a forum,
Cool.
so you can
Cool.
contact me through there and check it out, man. Get a subscription. Start your free trial
That's
today.
right, guys.
See how you like
That's
it.
right. And
Nice. Come on
learn from a
down.
champion. So that's awesome, man. All right, my man. So
Yeah.
you ready to get into the speed round questions? We got some good ones for you. We had to
Okay.
get creative. You got a heck of a history in the dirt bike world, so we had to make this one up ourselves. So to challenge you a little bit. All
Okay.
right, let's do it. Ben, 2 minutes on the clock.
Ding ding.
All right, let's do it. 2-stroke or 4-stroke? What's the real king of motocross?
Definitely 2-stroke.
All right. If you could go back and race one more event in your prime, which race would it be?
Padilla.
Okay, cool. What's the one motocross technique most riders mess up?
The way the handle grips on the motorcycle.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Best motorcycle you ever rode or owned?
My 76 Works Kawasaki 380.
Nice. You still have it?
Now, unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Back then, they just destroyed them. They didn't want anybody to get their hands on them, so they melted them
That
down.
sucks. So much. They did that to
Gosh.
so many different cars, bikes, everything. So dumb.
Yeah.
Who was the toughest competitor you ever lined up against?
Probably Roger Coster.
Biggest oh shit moment from your racing career?
Oh, probably when I lost my ride with Kawasaki.
Okay.
Mm.
One person, dead or alive, you would love to have a meal with and a talk.
Wow. That's a tough one. Man, I don't know about that. Oh boy. I'm just gonna have to say Joao Robert.
Okay. That's good. That's a good. All right. What is your go-to alcoholic beverage? And if you don't drink, what's your go-to snack?
Go-to alcoholic beverage would be tequila.
Tequila.
Not that I'm a big drinker, but
It's the cleanest of
when
them
I-
all. For sure. All right.
Yeah.
What's the best? Yeah, for sure. What's the best piece of advice you ever got in racing?
in racing,
Yeah.
find your passion and figure out how to make a living at it.
Okay. Cool. Who is the person or persons who influenced you and believed in you the most that you still thank to this day? Could be one, it could be multiple.
Uh, um, man, why is that a hard one for me? I guess
Because you probably are
Dale
multiple.
Burton.
Multiple. Dale Burton.
Yeah, I'd say if I had to pick one guy, it would be Dale Burton because he got me started racing. When I got those Huskies, he helped me with mechanical things on them. And he started taking me to races, man. And then he used his name that I could go racing that first year. So I really appreciate what he did for me, Dale
It's
Burton.
amazing, right? You look back at it now and you realize, like, wow, those small breaks and those people that came into my life, how they changed a lot of the things that where I am and where I was. So, all right.
Yeah.
I guess if you could coach any rider from any era, who would it be?
I'd like to have gotten a chance to train, I guess, Jeremy McGrath. I mean, Ricky Carmichael.
Carmichael.
The
Nice,
reason
yeah.
the reason I almost said Jeremy is I did have a chance to train him, but at the time I was training Jeremy, and I I didn't want to do it without asking Jeremy about it, and he wasn't okay with it, so
Okay.
I didn't.
Gotcha. That's cool. That's a good story right there. Um, be honest. Have you ever fallen over the starting gate?
Yeah, oh man, I must have. Not very often. I don't remember hitting the starting gate very much,
Okay.
but I'm sure it must have happened at some
All
point.
right, cool. Thanks for the honesty. What's one thing that today's motocross riders have way too easy?
Not working on their own bike, learning early on how to maintain their own motorcycle. And I know a lot of kids that don't even have to wash their bike.
Shit.
It's just too much, too easy. You gotta be responsible. You gotta earn it, or it don't mean anything.
If you
Yeah.
if you weren't into motocross, what do you think you'd be doing?
You know, that's a really tough question.
No, because you've been doing it your whole life.
Yeah, got started so early, but if I wasn't doing that, it'd probably be something like being a framer or running heavy equipment,
Okay.
something to work outside, work with my hands.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah.
Besides the One Gang Worldwide podcast, do you listen to anything out there? Do you listen to podcasts at all, or do you absorb any time with that? He froze up. All right. Yep. So do you listen to any other podcasts out there? Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, you did it, man. 1 minute and 59 seconds. You beat the record, so you're still champion, even with the One Gang Worldwide podcast. So thank you very much, Gary. Likewise for us too. It's been
Definitely.
awesome
Thanks
to
for
get to know
joining us,
you,
Gary.
man. You've had an incredible
Yep.
career, and the fact that you're giving back all you gave back to a lot of riders coming up, teaching them the old school way of doing things. It's got to be a blessing, for any kid that's probably gone through your school as far as education, and not just about motocross, but about life also. So thank you very much for everything you've done, and stay healthy, and looking forward to the back end part of the career on your end.
Yes, sir.
All right. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Gary. Take care.